South Dakota, where the wind blows. It's a VOR, very high omnidirectional radio tower. Well, it's an antenna dish. They used them in World War II. It's a DME, distance measuring equipment. Everything's alright in heaven. Everything is fine in heaven. Everything is fine. I got your good, or you got your good things, and I've got mine. In heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine. You got your good things, and I've got mine. All right, we are right over that way.
Or 4 p.m.
All right, all the way from Houston, moved out to Keller a while back. All the way from Houston, and he moved out to Keller way back 1988. I was living here at that time. I would say in 1985, let's see, 1983 I was 10. Yeah, around 1985 I was in one of the biggest schoolyard fights in Keller Intermediate, or Keller Junior High, sorry, Keller Junior High right up here. It was 6th, 7th, I believe it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. No, I'm wrong about that. It was 7th and 8th grade. Right down here off of Linda, Jody Ziegler lived. It was one of the first girls I've kissed. And then Brandy lived on the other side of Keller Intermediate. This is Keller Junior High. It hasn't changed a bit. It looks almost exactly the same. And I'll show you where the fight took place in detail. So it was a famous fight. I had a friend named Neely Norrell. He's passed away since. He was a hemophiliac. No one could fight him because if you punched him, you'd kill him. So he could beat up anybody in the school. There is a character, a guy named Ryan Beavers. And we both knew Christy Wright. My father was married at this church, Keller First Baptist, to my stepmom. I went to that wedding. I was one of the groomsmen. Anyway, the bus would pull up here, and the ropers and the skaters would usually sometimes fight kind of in this area. It's known as Keller Middle School, right here. Keller Middle School. They would meet right in there, and sometimes the skaters would bring smoke bombs and stuff. and the ropers would have their whips out. Alarm went off. So anyway, this is the schoolyard, or this baseball field for Keller Middle School. I went there in 1985. I was about 12 years old. 7th and 8th grade. This is Hoven Camp right here. I was on the JV football team, and there was a character named Neely Rell, who's a friend of ours. He was hemophiliac. You couldn't fight him because if you punched him, he'd bleed to death. And he would usually not fight. Now, if he did play football, they always had an ambulance at the site of the football field. So if he scraped his knee, he would be rushed to the hospital. So he usually didn't get in fights, but you didn't cross him. So what he ended up doing is managing fights. He was a short guy, very skinny. He had no temper, so he would just go from 0 to 100 and just haul off and hit you. He'd beat up anybody, even if they came too close to him or whatever. He was very mean, very emotional. Well, one of my friends went in and to the lunchroom cafeteria to get a ham and cheese croissant. They used this melted cheese on it. It was really good. Well, one of the guys would lift a few of those. He would steal a few of those ham and cheese ones, and I was given a couple of them, and I ate those. And someone, came up to me and said, "Hey, did you hear Neely called you a P.U.S.S. or Neely said Ryan called you a P.s.s.y. What are you going to do about it?" And I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" And they said, "Well, you're going to meet him and fight him." And like the whole lunchroom cafeteria went out. There was like 3 o'clock high. Everyone but the teachers or the principals. Now, to solve a fight, the coaches would bring you over here, and you would fight with gloves on, right in there. But I'll show you where the fight took place, and they've added on to the school. So I fought Ryan Beavers, and I thought I was Sylvester Stallone because I kept having him hit me in the face until he broke his wrist. It happened right there where this wall is, right here. Right there. And he hit me so many times, it blackened my eye. It was a horrible, horrible fight. And Neely Norrell was the manager of it. He made sure everyone watched it, and he would conduct fights all the time. He had to see violence. He ended up dying because he was a free bleeder. He was a hemophiliac. He ended up dying, I believe, of HIV/AIDS from a transfusion. They had a thing called Special 8. It mixed all these different bloods, and it was able, he was able to help his hemophilia. But it ended up also killing him by using that coming out of the 80s and going to the 90s. I think he died, and I don't really know exactly when. I just heard about it. But anyway, that's what happened. And the guy, Ryan Beavers, kept punching me. I tried some karate kicks and missed. I got one punch in. I got the first punch in. And he just kept punching me and punching me and punching me. I would go in. I'd say, "Come on, you're not so bad." And he'd punch me. I'd go, "Come on, you're not so bad." And he'd punch me again. I'd do that over and over again until finally... I barely could see out of I think it was my right eye or something like that. I remember looking in the rearview mirror right here, and my eye was nearly swollen shut. And Christy Wright saw it. She came out of the cafeteria, and I looked at her and I said, "Looks like I got my butt kicked." And she said, "No, you didn't," because that was a big deal back then. Anyway. So according to all my friends and everything, Ryan won. But I was affluent. There's a squirrel. Squirrel went down that way. My father had money. We lived in pretty much like a mansion. So I probably had it coming. This is First Baptist of Keller right here. That's where my father was married to Janice. Or where he married Janice. He started his second marriage. But my father made a phone call to Ryan Beavers' parents and said, "Well, you beat my son up so badly, or your son beat my son up so badly, he can barely see out of his eye." And let me think, he was right-handed, so it would have been in my left eye. So the punches would have been coming from the other, I'd put in my left eye. And in this one, it was just swollen shut. It was pretty bad. But he broke his hand. He had to go to the hospital and get a cast. So I didn't have to go to the hospital. It was just a black eye, basically. He probably hit me 20 times or so. And, you know, you get through it. And so they always wanted a rematch. And they wanted to get the coaches involved where they take you in and you get the boxing gloves on. They wanted me to box him again. But we never did. His hand was too sore. And, you know, he had to go to the hospital and get a cast up to his wrist. Because he broke his wrist on, you know, on my face. Because he didn't really know how to punch, really. You know, he kind of did. His father taught him how to box, but he was too angry. You know, we were young kids. It can get out of hand in junior high. Jeff Keys was the biggest kid. So when Ryan finally started pummeling me on the ground, Jeff Key was about the size of a man. He probably could even play, you know, college ball at the time. He pulled Ryan Beavers off of me and said, the fight's over. He had to listen to Jeff Keys because he could knock you out in one punch. He was a big dude. He could bench like 250 pounds in junior high or something crazy. Really big dude. Anyway, entire school was there to watch it go down. They watched me get my butt kicked. But here's the thing. I never quit. I kept going in, getting hit, and I put on a good show. I put on a good fight. And Neely was, you know, being my manager, was like, that's a pretty good fight. It's a pretty good fight. You know? My eye was just, I mean, it was swollen shut. But if I would have got a couple of those karate kicks in, that would have been it. But I missed. Nothing that drastic's ever really happened to me since. There's a couple of other incidences where I did get mad one time, and Neely, I don't know if he was around, but there was another kind of kid. Remember, he had warts on his hands. And he had said something to me. I got him in the headlock, and I think I punched him until he said, you know, it was over. So I beat him up, and that made me feel kind of powerful, I guess. So then I had to get my butt kicked. I think I did that first. I don't remember. I think so. And then later on, I got my butt kicked. It was kind of a raging bull kind of thing, you know. But it happened in junior high. And, you know, you could hear the kids in the audience, you know, whoa, man. You know, the smack, over and over. Keller Middle School. People don't even know about. I don't know if you ever tried writing a book. You keep writing it and writing it. And like, hey, have you read my book? No, I haven't heard of it. You know. This is connected to my pseudonym, my writer name, Ash Cole. Just to let you know. You can go to fictionpress.com and put in Ash Cole, and there's some books and stuff on there, and short stories and plays, poetry, all that jazz. I just, you know, had to do it. I don't know. I just had to write these things down. But I feel like at least this is organic. You could see it. You could access it. People sometimes like watching things like a cat. Weird looking drawing as a body. It says, smell you later, beautiful. Kind of thing. Plus, it's an active thing to do. You know, instead of being stuck in a writer's room, you're in the world, telling the story. You know, driving around. There's cows way over there. I was raised in this area. I notice you can't hear it as well if it's zoomed in. I was raised in this area. Usually at about 1, you can hear it the best, or 0.5. We're at 1 right now. That's 0.5. This is like Roanoke Road right here. I was watching some of the footage the other day and I realized I was talking while it was zoomed. And it muffles it. I think it's because of the camera, the way the camera switches its lens. It makes the microphone different. Don't know the exact reason or if it's designed to do that. But that's what it does. So my dad was one of the first millionaires in this area because of gold and silver. That's the Hunt. That was known as the Hunt's property. And he struck his riches in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was in office. Did pretty well for about 10 years until he had a fire, and the EPA fined him, which caused him to kind of roll backwards. He began borrowing from a Boston bank, a certain amount on each dollar. And then eventually the bank pretty much owned it. And then he sold Lone Star Casting, which was known once as Eutectic Metals. He sold Lone Star Casting to someone else, and then they bought it. Probably in the early 90s, mid 90s or so. And then he switched over to be a consultant. And I went into the theater. What is storytelling? I think it was around the time Stand By Me came out. Based on The Body, Stephen King, Rob Reiner made it. I think I'm that writer kid, like Will Wheatley. I think I'm supposed to tell stories. I think that's where it is. So I told my dad about the age of 12 that I wanted to be a writer. I think from then on, it all came out that way. Even though I got into acting and to this crazy life. I was really into Stephen Patrick Morrissey from the Smiths because he was a writer. He was a writer that didn't do it in a traditional way. He did start on a typewriter, and he started being kind of like a music review. He was reviewing albums in Manchester, European albums and stuff like that, and he became the president of the New York Dolls fan club. And he decided to step out on stage, pick up the microphone, and become a singer. Leave the typewriter behind. He stepped out and then he started writing, which is a beautiful way to do it. It's a great creative way. I've tried it. I've tried song. It's tough. I was listening to the Rain Song, which I'm about to turn on in a minute, by Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. He tunes the guitar so crazy. You would not believe how crazy. But he tunes the guitar, and there's a beautiful performance of it by this young woman that has like 1 million views, like 2 million views. And I was listening to that today. It's a great song. The Rain Song, Led Zeppelin. So 4 months before I was born, on March 23 of 1973, I was born in July. So it was 4 months before, the Rain Song by the band Led Zeppelin came out. And it was on the album House of the Holies. It may have been in The Song Remains the Same, the movie. I'd have to watch it. But it's called The Rain Song. And it's just an amazing song by Jimmy Page. It goes to show that there is pure genius out there behind the guitar. And when you attempt to play a Jimmy Page song, your fingers start to hurt and your mind starts to strain because he puts you to the max, on playing music. But listen to it, it's a great song. It's on House of the Holies, 1973, came out in March. Well, I was listening to Johnny in Old and in the Way, the pantomime by featuring Molemo. He said that things that he prayed for was, all kinds of things for his family, and there's a moment where he prays in it. You got to see this show, or at least get a digital copy of it. It's brilliant. There's a moment where he prays kind of on stage, and in a way we become kind of like God looking down from heaven on Johnny as he's praying, looking up, almost like a little child. as he's looking up. And one of the things he asked for is that his kids be creative and artistic and, you know, genius and all that stuff, and not make up, not be too pretentious, you know. I thought, well, you know, I'm making a movie on my phone, you know, and I'm trying to use Michael Caine's film acting style that I saw today on YouTube, and not make too many facial gestures. I don't know if it's pretentious or not. I really don't care. But after all, it is a movie, because it's a motion picture with sound, and it's being done on my phone. And I do plan working on a song, and I'm hoping that Linda will be around. She may have to go on a travel or not. We don't know, but she may have to travel, and we'll talk about that later. But the song is it's only two verse lyrics. And then it has the chorus. I kept it simple. I just have to because of everything. So it's got 2 verses and then 2 chorus. It's fairly a simple song, but I'm working on making it a little better. I mean, you know, much, much better. I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah, it's called Wild Burning Eyes. But I worked on it today, and I'll probably work on it tomorrow. And sometimes it's the only thing that takes my mind off just the general pain of pain, you know. My rib still kind of hurts from the attack. I'm okay, you know. I'm stretching. It's not too bad. But sometimes I wake up and I have this kind of anxiety, like a hole in my stomach or an absence, you know, like an abyss, like something's missing. I haven't seen my kids in 5 years. That includes David, Elizabeth, and Gwendolyn. It's been a long time. It was March 9th of 2019 when my second wife left, when Angel left with the kids. I haven't seen her since. And seeing Johnny, it was kind of almost a religious experience for me. I felt like for a moment, just like he talked about when he was on the stage and he could see his friends. Well, I could see us like in heaven for a moment. And we were all God's children waiting for the feast, all celebrating for just a moment. And then I sat down next to Johnny. I got a selfie. I told him I was going to get a photo, and then we did that handshake like that, you know, like you did when you were bros. It hurt his arm. I just missed my exit. Actually, you know what? No, I can take this exit. It's fine. But it felt like a religious moment, you know, and I was trying to figure out, like if it was a Last Supper kind of thing, who was I, you know, because we all did Adventure with Jesus, and I played Luke. At that moment, for just a slight moment, I felt a little bit like Jesus, you know, for just a moment, you know. And Johnny was sitting down, and he looked different because he's older. He's 84. He was the one that first introduced me to mime and like true theater, you know, like just telling the story. And I don't know, I've always kind of been, I have to be honest, I've always kind of feared Johnny, because he's always been kind of well, I think everybody always talked about him, you know, backstage and stuff. You never know when he was kind of going to go off, you know. Get your head out of your butt, you know. And you're like, okay. Couldn't argue with the guy. This guy you just couldn't argue with. Plus, he was a director always, you know. But I found out Brian Beck died. And I didn't ask Pete Gooch. I didn't ask him how. Pete knew. And I wanted to go look at his Facebook today, because I've seen his Facebook a few times. I just couldn't accept it. I haven't really been able to grieve on what happened. Brian and I started a theater group called the Rag Carpet Theater Group, like in the early 90s, like 94. And we toured a little bit, and we did a show called Passion. I played Jesus. Brian Beck played Judas Iscariot, and like there were other people. James Gilbert was in it. He played a few people. Mario was in it. Some people from Hip Pocket, where they came to Wesleyan to help us. Brian and I traveled to Gambier, Ohio to study with Greg Goldstein. We studied mime together. And Brian bunked like the next door to me. He was a great friend, you know. We couldn't handle the theater together because we were young and chasing after women and all that kind of stuff. But we did get to do some shows. We got to do Passion. We got to teach. We taught mime underneath a church at Wesleyan, Texas Wesleyan, at the basement of the church. Gilbert was in it. Amber Kelly was in the class. We'd walk across this carpet. That's where we got the idea of rag carpet theater, like a carpet made of rags. And it's just crazy, you know, because no one told me. I thought maybe that could have happened. He was in Waiting for Godot too with Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker was in Breaking Bad. He played Skinny Pete. And Rob Vasquez is a playwright at Fort Worth. He was in it. He played Potts. I played Lucky. I had to hang upside down from a tree. This long monologue, and I'd run around the stage like Robin Williams. And Brian was in it. And I remember one time I was supposed to have this handkerchief. I could have mimed it, or I could have taken a piece of my clothing off. I didn't want to rip Deanne Simon's, you know, the outfit that she made for Lucky. And I couldn't find the handkerchief to give over to Pozzo, but I saw that Brian was wearing a handkerchief, and I went and I grabbed his handkerchief, you know, off his neck, and he got mad and yelled at me backstage, and I was upset because I didn't know what else to do. He needed a handkerchief, so I just borrowed his handkerchief. Charlie Baker got mad, said, "You don't ever get in an actor space like that," and I was sweating it out. Johnny made a long tape and saying, "Everybody stop arguing about the hanky," and was talking about weird contraptions in the sky, making us laugh, and then bringing back the peace. And then we all eventually made up, and then I ran off to California shortly after that, and then moved to Long Beach, lived there for about a year, and then I moved to New York, and I never looked him up again. I knew he had a Facebook. I don't know why those things kind of happen. I guess they happen out of love. But I never got to tell him I was sorry. You know, I'm sorry, Brian. You know, because I know you're a good guy, and I know God loves you. And we've had some great conversations together. I don't know if you can hear this, but I truly am sorry for everything, for being an arrogant. He'd always tell me how vain I was, and do appreciate all the times that we had together. And I didn't know you passed away, but I know God has you, and I know you're in a better place. Pete told me, and everything. So. But part of this show is something that just kind of started happening. I didn't mean to be vain. It's just part of the beast that we're dealing with. There's a silver alert coming up out of Brownsville, Texas. Looks like it's a SRD 9344 on the license plate. But anyway, we had some fun times, Brian. We cracked up a lot of jokes. Went off to Gambier. You got to meet Marcel Marceau, and I didn't go that year, but I went the year before. Sorry, alarm went in.